Good afternoon. My name is Małgorzata Kurzępa. I'm a founder and director of Fairhouse Investments, the company which invests in properties in UK for over 7 years and over 10 years altogether in other countries in Europe. Today, it's a wonderful Sunday. To be honest, I was thinking, that today I failed completely, and it would be the first time when I got my live in a very bad weather. But fortunately, the sun came out, so we're lucky, and we could still enjoy the sunny weather. However, I'm not sure about the temperature. But I want to continue the course I started 3 weeks ago when I was telling you how to rent your property to the tenants without help from letting agent. How to do it by yourself if for some reason you want to do it this way. One reason could be that you could have bad experience with the agents, or you just don't want to pay them for it, you want to save money. And the third, I think the most important reason is if you are at the beginning of your path and you want to do it by yourself because you want to learn as much as you can. So 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, we talked about staging, about how to compare the prices at the local market, how to prepare the advert and where to advertise. Then how to choose the best tenant, how to show the property to the tenant, about searches for the tenants, and the last thing we talk about was AST, so assured short hold tenancy, what should be included in it, and what are responsibilities for the tenants and the landlords. So today I have to continue, and actually a part of it is the continuity of responsibilities and duties of tenants and landlords, because what I want to mention is something called quiet tenancy and right of access. So from one side, if the tenant rent a flat from you, a house, he has rights to keep his quiet tenancy. It means you are not allowed to disturb his quiet tenancy. So I understand that for most of us, we think that the property belongs to us, so we have rights to access it. It's only partial truth, because if we already rented it, it's like we gave our rights, we passed our rights to the tenant, and now he has full rights, 100% rights to the tenancy, to the property. So of course, what happens in the situation when we need this access? So some of these circumstances are like when we want to check if the property is nicely maintained. So in this case, this part is of course included into AST, but even in this case, we have to inform our tenant that we need an access to the property. We have to inform him 24 hours before we want to get to the property. The clue is that he could agree, but not necessarily. He doesn't have to agree. So first of all, these are check visits. Second thing, more when something urgent happens and we need an urgent access to the property. And be careful, because even if we need an urgent access, still we need the agreement from tenant's side. And in very extreme situation, you have to go to court to get a court order to get access to the property, because if you use your common sense, if there is a leak in the property and, for example, the tenants downstairs flat is calling you and saying there is a leak in the property, you contact your tenants, you're asking him if everything is fine, and you're telling him that you need an access to the property for the plumber to double check everything. Most of the people, of course, would agree, even if they are not in the property. They tell you, of course, you can come in and double check, because if something is going on, it could destroy the property, our property or someone else's property, and it would be difficult, because we would be responsible for the damage. However, it does not always happens this way. So as I said, in an extreme situation, we have to go to court. Maybe I was lucky because I've never been in such a situation that I really needed an urgent access, and I didn't get my tenant didn't agree. But you know, such situations happens. Anyway, you have to remember he needs a quiet tenancy. To keep your right to access, you have to meet in between with your tenant. Of course, tenant is responsible for the property, for the for the maintenance of the property in this way. That he should, for example, take care of the garden. He should replace the bulbs if they are if they doesn't work. He's responsible for little damage. He has to fix them if something is damaged by him. He's also responsible for the drainage of the for the plumbing, for the drainage of sink, toilet, bath. But these are actually quite questionable situations, because if something is blocked, it's very difficult to prove that this is the tenant's responsibility. So unfortunately, in most of the situations, the landlord had to fix if something is stuck in a drainage. Landlord is responsible for the outside of the building, again all drainage which is outside, for the pipes, for the roof, for the gutters, sorry, for gas installation, for electricity installation, and of course for the boiler and access to warm water. From my experience, actually, the biggest problem in most of the British properties is a damp, and not the rising damp, for which of course the landlord is responsible if there is a rising damp in a flat or property, the landlord basically has to deal with it. It doesn't matter if he wants it or not. But I'm talking about the condensation, because condensation is definitely the tenant's fault when the property doesn't have a proper ventilation. And of course, it could be a problem with a flat itself. For example, most of the bathrooms should have mechanical ventilation. If it doesn't, it's very difficult for the tenant to keep it properly ventilated if there is no mechanical ventilation and there is no window in the bathroom. Of course, in this case, he could only do as much as he could. Most of the windows should have an option for ventilation, but the truth is that if you, for example, if you dry your laundry inside the flat, then you just have to open the window often enough, because you know the condensations appears in the part of the wall which is very, very cold, but there is too much moisture from inside the building. So as I said, I think this is the main problem. And of course, if whatever happens to the property, we are responsible to fix it, and we should do it in a reasonable time. But this time is not actually mentioned anywhere in the AST. And actually, with my experience from Poland, I was slightly surprised by this, because usually in Polish contract it's written you have 2 weeks or 10 days, whatever. In AST, it's not mentioned. I mean, it's mentioned that you have to fix it, but there is no time frame. I think it's because it's very difficult to keep the time frame if you have to rely on other people to help you do it. But still, you have reasonable time to fix the problem. If you won't do it as a landlord, your tenant could call a citizen advice bureau. This is the organization which help tenants to solve it. But most of the time, they advise the tenant what to do next if he has such a problem. And the second institution is a council. And if there is something really wrong with the property and the tenant, for example, it's not possible to live in the property because of the damp or because of the leak, or something is completely broken, no warm water, things like this, then the council usually send his officer, and in very extreme situations, the property could be taken away from the landlord. The next thing is which I wanted to mention, is when we already signed the AST and what we have to do next. So first of all, you have to give the tenant the copy of AST. The second thing is you have to give him energy performance certificate. Third, gas certificate, and from 1st of July 2020, electricity certificate. Gas certificate is something we have to update every year, but the electricity certificate has to be updated every 5 years. Of course, if something is damaged, we have to fix it, but it has to be, the installation has to be certified every year for gas, every 5 years for electricity. We have to give the tenant the booklet how to let. This booklet you find at the website of gov.uk in the file for landlords, for tenancies. And this is updated by the government every couple months or every year. I'm not sure how often, but if you go to the gov.uk website, then you will have a current version, so you wouldn't be in trouble. Of course, you have to give him an inventory check, and the best option is if the tenant would sign it and give you a copy of which is signed. Next thing, it's good if you check with your tenant or already had a direct debit or send the request for direct debit to his bank to be sure that the rent would be coming into your account on a regular basis every month, on an agreed day of every month. What I'm doing is also a picture of a set of keys, just in case, and it's good to check the meters. In my opinion, very important thing is also, it's not mandatory, but this is what I'm doing, and I'm trying to I also expect when I'm renting whatever flat, whichever property. This is these are manuals from all electrical all equipment which is in the flat, because if someone you only use a washer, not washer dryer before, he could not be aware how to use this dryer part. If each boiler is slightly different, so the same, if you want to put the proper settings on your boiler, you have to know how to do it. So I think the manual is a great thing if you leave the manuals for the tenant, so he could check everything and he would be sure that he know how to set all the equipment to work as he needs it. The last thing is the information that deposit has been protected in the deposit scheme, and we have 30 days to do it. And this is mandatory, remember about it, because it's extremely important. Doesn't matter what happens to you. When you sign AST with the tenants, you take deposit from them, you have only 30 days to put it into scheme. There are 3 governmental schemes. One is Deposit Protection Service, the second is My Deposit, and the third one is Tenancy Protection Scheme. You can choose one of 3, but you still have 30 days to do it. Remember that you have 30 days not to put the you have 30 days to put it into the scheme, but sometimes it takes the scheme a while before they send you a confirmation. So I'm trying to do it as fast as I could. There are 2 options for deposits, how to put your deposit into the scheme. One is insured, so you keep the money, the cash, but you only pay kind of insurance. This is usually around £20-30. It depends on the amount of deposit. And the second option is called custodial, and then you physically pay all the cash to the scheme. What tenant is responsible for, he should sign all the agreements for gas, electricity and water. He should move them to his own name. Of course, sometimes the meters are pay as you go, and then it's irrelevant. He's just topping up the meters, but if there is a proper contract, he has to move the contract to his own name. It's not, I mean, there are plenty of gas and electricity companies, so he could choose whichever he wants or he prefers. For the water, you probably know it's usually the local provider, and there is not much options in this matter. Very important thing is the council tax, because in the moment when the tenant moved to the property, he's becoming responsible for the council tax. So what I'm doing, I mean, of course he has to call them, and then they start sending him they will send him the new bill for his own name and to his new address. But what I'm doing, I usually, in the moment when I sign the AST with the tenant, I'm calling council tax office to let them know that I'm not from day 24th of May 2020. I'm not responsible any longer for the council tax, because now it is on the tenant. This is all actually what I wanted to tell you, because in this moment the tenant is already in the property. You have direct debit, so you would expect that the rent will come to you next to your bank account next time. The tenant is happy, everything is fine, he's settling down in the property, and yeah, we're done. It's all. We are successful. I also, because I will tell you next week, I will start telling you how to manage the property by yourself. But because it's quite complex subject, I don't want to start it today, because I don't want to extend it into a certain amount of time. So one more thing I wanted to mention are some updates which appears at the landlord's market recently. There were a few changes which appeared at the beginning of the pandemic and the beginning of the lockdown, and actually most of them just has been extended, and there are some new ones, or we are withdrawing from others. So first thing, mortgage holidays, which has been extended for another 3 months. I think there is no surprise here, because we are aware of the fact that actually we are still in lockdown. Lockdown hasn't been lifted yet. Very few people started going to work. Actually, when I look at the traffic at the streets, I'm not so sure about it, because I have a feeling there is as much traffic as it used to be in January, but I'm not an expert to judge it. Anyway, so the mortgage holidays has been extended, but the memorandum on evictions hasn't been extended yet, but I think it would be natural that the last one also would be extended. It means we won't be able to evict our tenants for the next 3 months. I have actually an update for you here as well from other matter. Like because I did apply recently for the mortgage, just before they sent me the money, I got a phone call from the lender with a question if I have applied for mortgage holidays. So I think this is the confirmation that if you don't have to, just don't apply for mortgage holidays. I mean, if you're not really pushed towards the wall and you can survive without it, I think it's not a good idea to take it, unless you really have to, of course. The second thing about the update is that the lenders increased loan to value, which means that as previously you could get a mortgage for 80% of the property value, sometimes 75%, now it's going down. So lenders trying to move to the mortgages like 60% of the value, or maybe 65, 70. However, in the same time, most of the products which have been available at the market before, they are coming back. Other thing is that, as you probably expect, some valuers, they would be more conservative, as they used to be in January or before the pandemic. because they don't know if the prices will drop down suddenly and how much. So they are more conservative. So if you did the refurbishment and you thought your property is worth, for example, £75,000, the valuer could only assess its value as 70,000. So you have to be aware of it and prepared for it. Third thing is about viewings. So the physical viewings are going back slowly. I think agents still prefer online viewings first, or video viewings first. So, but if you are really sure that you want to buy or rent a property, also the physical viewings or in-person viewings are now available. However, there are some restrictions. So first of all, the property has to be empty. There could be no tenants in the property. And the second thing is that should be breaks between viewings. The last thing, last update is that the rental arrears are only are at the level of 3% now. So I said only, but for some people it could be a lot. For some others it could be very little. But the fact is that if your tenant is in arrears, it means that you don't receive 100% of your rent. So this is not great anyway. So for you it's like 0-1 system. However, looking at this statistically, I think this is much less than landlords expected. So I think in general is not that bad. So thank you very much. This is all I wanted to tell you today. Oh, maybe one more thing. I mentioned a few books which I advise you to read, and first of them was Poor Dad, Rich Dad by Rich Dad, Poor Dad, sorry, by Robert Kiyosaki. The second one was Why Men Doesn't Listen and Women Cannot Read Maps by Barbara and Alan Pease. And today I want to mention the third book. The third book, the same as two previous, it's not strictly about properties, but it's about the mindset, and it's about how we see the life. So the author is Malcolm Gladwell, and the title is Outliers. I haven't read it actually. I listened it on as an audiobook. And actually, I think it's a great option if you travel much by car or if you go for long walks, as I do. So Outliers is about, it shows us certain groups of people which has been successful in life. So it tells about things like about the rules of 10,000 hours to do something, to master something, that you have to spend 10,000 hours on doing something before you master it. It says about things like that sometimes it's very important in which month of the year you've been born, for it influence your success, and other very, very interesting things. So I strongly advise you to look into this book. You can get it from Audible or just buy a physical copy if you prefer this option. So thank you very much. It was Małgorzata Kurzępa from Fairhouse Investments. I was talking about how to rent your own property without the help from letting agent. I wish you a wonderful Sunday, and I invite you for next Sunday when I will be talking about how to do the maintenance of your property again without help. Thank you very much. It was great to have you here, and please, if you feel that you like it, please push the like button. And if you don't like it, please write a comment. If I could change something, I will do it, because I want to encourage as much of you as I could, as many of you, sorry, as I could, to at least start putting a little bit of your interest into investing in properties. Thank you very much. Have a great Sunday. Bye bye.